This next topic was a video made by Abba Preach about Charlie Kirk. Abba Preach, if you guys don't know, are creators on YouTube. They are, from my perspective, I would say they're fair-ish. You know, sometimes they've had some perspectives that I disagree with, but I would say that these are two guys who have at least some common sense and trying to, what I think sometimes is, you know, cater to multiple sides, which I don't think is inherently bad. I think sometimes they do get caught up in certain perspectives. I would say that they're left-leaning. I would even say that, you know, they're from Canada, so they don't live in the US, but I would even say that they are liberals. This video to me was very interesting because of the topics that the topic they discussed, which is specifically Charlie. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the video.
Charlie Kirk, we didn't, we're what, 7 days after?
7 days.
Craig David. So. Oh, you guys cracking jokes? Yeah, that's what we do. I think the easiest way to start this video, you know, and I think the thing where most of us agree is that political violence should never be acceptable. The idea that you might have the most reprehensible views, the most disgusting things, you should have the right, and you should be safe enough to be able to espouse those views without losing your life. After his assassination, the main thing I took away, most of what I've seen after the fact is folks trying to figure out whether or not this guy's right wing or left wing, so they can, you know, pit blame on the other side.
100%.
I've seen people call for violence. I've seen people have this like rhetoric of us versus them.
Good to fight back against evil. It is time for the righteous to prevail.
I know we don't have a lot of time. There's so many good speakers tonight. This is a battle between good and evil. I wish we could compromise, but you can't compromise with evil. You can't compromise with evil.
I've seen people be like, well, the other side is the one that does it. And I think all of that really defeats the purpose of trying to make the world more safe, right? Because we got here, I feel as though this was a long time coming. And what am I saying a long time? We've been here for a long time. There's been a lot of political crime, a lot of political killings over the last 8 to 7 years. Bombing of abortion clinics.
An Irvine man has been sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for the 2022 firebombing of a Planned Parenthood clinic.
Different politicians who've been attacked, either attempts or assassinations that were completed on both sides, be it Democrats or Republicans.
Sources telling ABC News that 2 Minnesota state lawmakers have been shot, and when law enforcement officials say it was a targeted incident.
There have been extremists and crazies who've gone out and murdered people on a semi-regular basis for the last 9 to 10 years that I've been looking at it and paying attention. Anybody who sits out there and goes, well, the lefties are the danger. In fact, this year, I feel like you guys killed quite a few politicians for that matter. There's been Trumpers who've done that.
Over the past 24 hours, I've seen some.
See, I think that's a gross mischaracterization. The Minnesota specifically, that one was an interesting situation because it's not someone who vowed Trump. You look at some of the details that have come up, and it's not that. As a matter of fact, the state representative, she had actually voted no on a Democratic issue, which, again, could be a little bit conspiracy theory, and I can see how it can be, was said to be a deciding factor in what the gentleman who did this action and why he committed the action. And so I'm not trying to say, maybe they didn't know, I'm not imply that they are using misleading information on purpose, but there is definitely a lot more to it than just like, oh, it was a Trumper guy and he killed the representative and her husband. And I think, like I always say, that everything is multifaceted. Could he have had some right-leaning thoughts and some right-leaning ideas? For sure, I can see that. But to just equate it to the right only is not only irresponsible, not correct. And again, it's one of those things where immediately, even with the Charlie Kirk thing, immediately you go, oh, well, it's the left. Oh, well, it's the right. Well, you know, I myself said it in a couple of videos I made here on Kick, where I was like, oh man, this guy's got to be left-leaning. But, you know, I want to make sure that I rephrase that and say, it's not about left or right. It's just about this person was crazy and his ideas were supported by someone. We have to get to the bottom of it versus just saying, oh, this is totally left, this is totally right.
And some in the media, some of the very same people who intentionally stoked murderous hatred against people like Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk specifically, now saying that we need to turn down the temperature and start having conversations. Well, Charlie tried to have conversations with you on the left, and you killed him for it.
The same way some Trumpers decided to go kill those Minnesota senators, right? They weren't out there advocating violence. They were at their homes, and this guy showed up to kill them and try to kill more of them. doesn't mean you shouldn't tone down the rhetoric. But apparently Matt Walsh disagrees. Let's hear why.
You're killing us in our churches. You tried to kill our president. You killed one of our greatest advocates in Charlie Kirk. You have been openly cheering for and celebrating and encouraging and committing political violence for years. Antifa, BLM, you made a hero out of Luigi Mangione. And you celebrate Charlie's death even now. It's too late to turn the temperature down. This is not a time to hold hands. It's a time for justice. It is a time for good to fight back against evil. It is time for the righteous to prevail for the sake of our country and for our families and our children.
The righteous to prevail.
You're denouncing all this shit that happened and you said this is wrong, and then you advocate for this shit to happen.
Yeah.
You're portraying the same thing over and over again. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. Yeah, but it's a sports mentality.
Fair.
My clique can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And will do no wrong. No, sometimes your clique does shit plays. It happens. Acknowledge that. I bleed red, I bleed blue. That's really me. It's one of the reasons why I was not going to sports, because those people were the people that were bullying me with that mentality. They were like, if you don't think like them, it's like, and then I was like, stay away from sports.
Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked with hammers, and Donald Trump and his son were making fun of him after that attack.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi, who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know?
Well, how about the fact that, a lot of the people who stormed the...
I have a different perspective. Making a joke about a situation that happened versus talking about violent things happening to people are two very different things. And you have to be able to not conflate the two, because that's where your argument, and from my perspective at least, and I think from a lot of other logical people's perspective, can poke holes. Posting the whitey tighties because he's an old guy, and that's what they... I mean, I'm not extremely well versed in if he was or wasn't in it. The hammer was the weapon that was used. Do you think if Paul Pelosi died, they would have made those jokes? Now, asking, how's her husband doing, right? What is the context of that? I actually haven't seen that video of Trump, so I'm not immediately willing to condemn it. I think could you say it's poor taste? 100%. Poor taste in words? Sure. Could you dislike it? Yeah. But to say that equals the same thing that's happening with the Charlie Kirk situation? Wow.
The Capitol, January 6th, we're calling for Mike Pence to be hung.
I'm telling you, if Pence cave, we're going to drag through the streets. You politicians are going to get drugged through the streets. Yeah.
I saw Asmongold say it was like 90% the left.
I think that in the last 5 years or so, especially since BLM, it's been a 90% left-wing thing. But that doesn't mean that the 10% right-wing people are right either.
And it's like, well, crime statistics disagree with you, and it says most of the political violence in this is committed by the right. That's what the stats say. So for people to come out after the fact and just make it sound like it's one-sided is just bizarre to me. And then also people looking into the shooter and they're like, oh, I think he might have had a trans girlfriend.
Yeah, a trans roommate. What does that have to do with it?
Bro. And in a time where people say rhetoric is the reason that...
See, and that right there just shows, what does that have to do with the roommate? It has a lot to do with the roommate. If you know anything about some of the medication that trans folks tend to be on, maybe not all, but some of them cause issues. And part of those issues have led to multiple shooters in the most recent years being what? Trans, or being non-binary, or being gender fluid, and all these things. I've talked about it before. You've had a decent amount of the last mass shootings being, and when I say decent amount, I think it's like, I want to say at least 3 out of 5, maybe it might be more like 2 out of 4, but regardless, that amount is worrisome, right? And any mass shooting should be worrisome. And I know that probably their next point is going to be, oh, well, white men cause a lot of the white shootings for sure. I agree. And, we got to figure that out too. But to nullify, to invalidate is probably a better way to say it. To invalidate a theory that could and should be investigated, right, that could lead to this issue and should be investigated, is kind of disingenuous from my perspective.
That violence has happened. The moment Charlie Kirk died, I saw Trump get on and he was just like, well, these radical left Marxists, So they're complaining about the fact that they call Nazis all the time. And what do they call everybody who's a radical left, Marxist, socialist, communist? It's like, okay, got it. Everybody does this kind of hyperbolic. If people don't like Charlie Kirk and want to acknowledge the fact that he had disgusting views, that's their right. And people try to cancel folks for that. I'm not with that at all. Okay, the guy did say some very disgusting things throughout his life. He said them very publicly, and people whitewashing him. I've heard people call him a good Christian boy. Maybe from your perspective, it's okay for people to have a different perspective. I certainly don't share the one where he's some good. I've heard him say some really so that's my personal opinion.
You had a daughter and she was 10 and she got raped. And she was going to give birth and she would, and she was going to give birth and she was going to live. Would you want her to go through that and carry her baby?
That's awfully graphic.
It's but it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered.
Oh, okay, great. So
do you think that put up a longer clip? I actually saw that part, and you don't have to agree with his thought process, because I don't think I would agree with that. I don't have a daughter, but if I did, I think I would choose not to. But if you allow him to explain and listen to his explanation, it comes from a place of a thought process that he's thought out, that he's not just spewing hatred. He's not saying that you are an evil person for this, but this is evil. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, there's a correlation there because, if you say the action is evil, then that means you're calling me evil. Sure, call it as you may. It's not what he said, though.
There should be free school lunch for all children.
No.
Why?
Of course not. Because parents should feed their kids, not the government.
What if they can't?
Go get a job.
A child?
The parents should go get the job.
Yeah.
This is important. First of all, this is really.
I want children to eat?
Of course I do. Show me a single child in America going hungry. Doesn't exist. Number two, we have churches, we have food shelters, we have billions, and it does not exist. We have a child obesity problem, not a child starvation problem in this country.
I mean, Joe Biden is a bum.
Another clip that I can see that. I don't know the context. I want to see the whole context of the conversation, and I'm curious what if there's a longer clip, I'm curious to see what the context is of what he thinks. Do we have a child starvation problem? I don't think a starvation problem within itself. Are there people who are going hungry who can't afford enough food? Yeah, I would agree with that. But to say this is a starvation problem, I kind of am leaning towards that. Now, it's something that I would have to do a little bit more research. But again, this is another clip that's like, why are we clipping things? Why are we not looking at the long form content and really understanding, okay, this is what he's saying from it? And even if you disagree, right? Because I disagree with the free lunch part. I was definitely a kid who got free lunch in school. That helps parents for sure. And I think his main focus of that is just the government shouldn't pay for that. We should figure out other ways to handle this because it's a large portion of the budget that's going to that. Whether you agree with that thought process or not, it's not coming from a place of hatred. It's not coming from a place of dislike or disdain for the person. And that's what I think the video is not alluding to.
Dementia-filled Alzheimer's corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
I know we don't have a lot of time. There's so many good speakers tonight. This is a battle between good and evil. I wish we could compromise, but you can't compromise with evil. You can't compromise with evil.
I think the DOJ should immediately move to unseal all the Epstein documents in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
I think every file should be released to the public the same way as the JFK files.
Charlie Kirk got one call from the president, and this was his response.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands.
People in this day and age cannot emotionally multitask.
He got one call from the administration, and that's like, how do you make that connection? Because he's saying he's moving on. Like, you can't continuously talk about the same topic over and over. It gets to a point where it's like, we know what they need to do. If they're not going to do it, we hold them accountable and we move on. I don't understand the thought process here. Like, I don't get it. That's just another point that you can show this clip and say, oh, see what I'm saying? See how he thought? Like, that's not a full thought. That's a clip.
You know that two things can coexist at the same time? I cannot wish someone harm, but also not be sad for the harm that happens to them. I don't wish it on them, but I'm like, you don't mean that you're wishing someone bad. You don't have to be celebrating and be like, I'm not going to put my flag.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
That was wild. treating that dude like he was a national hero is crazy. So, I mean, veterans die every single day in the line of duty. Yeah. And the president will not do a damn thing. But this guy gets shot, and then all of a sudden they doing all this hubbub. It's crazy.
That's why.
Another argument that's silly, because Abba supposedly was in the military, so you would know that when you do pass away in the military, your base usually also, not just that, but you have ceremonies every day, sunrise, sunset, honoring that. So to say that, oh, well, veterans aren't honored. Well, yeah, veterans didn't have over 60 million people following them on multiple social medias. This part of the argument really makes no sense. Oh, well, we're not honoring other people who die, who da-da-da, and this guy was a national hero. This guy led the charge, regardless of what he was saying. Just think about it like this. He led the charge on public discourse and having said discourse with anyone who wanted to talk to him. He never disrespected anybody. He never called them names. He never said things from a perspective where you can say he was being inflammatory. Now, that you're inflamed by his thought process is different than being inflammatory. I really don't care that much for Charlie Kirk. I really don't. What frustrated me the most was how people were celebrating the fact that he went out. You have other people, and I made this point in previous videos, you have other people who are way more inflammatory in the way they speak, where if this was to happen to them, I can see why people would say, good riddance, I'm glad that this happened to them. But not this guy. The guy who spoke from a perspective that was, hey, everyone should have a voice. Even people I disagree with. We should talk about this. And then he proceeded to challenge them with facts. Not challenge them because they're less than or not good enough, but challenge them with a perspective that they would need to critically think in order to essentially put their own thought process up to his thought process. And he was taken out for that. That affects all of us. That affects you, Abba Preach. That affects me. That affects anybody who has an opinion. Because the moment you have an opinion that doesn't go with the masses, you can now become a Charlie Kirk.
That's what I'm saying. So, but things can, yes, it is. It's not empathy. It's not compassion. There's this neutrality that is a possibility as well. Especially when you're affected by the things that he's saying.
And you contributed. Like, if we're all honest, none of this is surprising because we've been inching towards this whole time. We've been here for a while.
No, we're not.
Extreme rhetoric, all this, calling these people Nazis, calling these people Marxist, communist, radical, like all of this stuff.
Call these people basically not human.
Yes. How many YouTubers have I seen calling for a potential civil war? Okay, because of what's happening. How many people have I seen even post-attack still carry on with the exact same good versus evil? Who do they think is good? Their side, obviously. Their side is only full of good people, and the other side is the evil side. And so when you hear all this rhetoric, it's like, of course, this is where it's going to happen. Of course, when you inflame your audience to say this person deserves to be hung, this person deserves to be shot by gunfire, or whatever it is, and people constantly hear this, they're going to internalize this good versus evil. And that's why you have people showing up to Pelosi house trying to kill him, or why you have those Democrat senators in Minnesota being killed, or why you had those Republicans shot at the Israeli embassy. We have made everything an existential crisis, and to a degree it is, but we don't know how to have good dialogue and understand these things. I'm going to caution everybody against it. Yeah. Doesn't matter who gets assassinated, whether it's me tomorrow or whatever. I would never, let's say it's me. Let's say it's me tomorrow, hypothetically. I'm out, a fresh and fit fan. I would never hope that you guys go out and try to do some retribution. Okay? In that same token, as a lefty myself, I would not want you guys to go, that's the wrong idea. No matter how bad it is out there.
How the same people that are always talking about gang mentality and gang, the gangs are gangs and black on black, you having the same mentality. An eye for an eye. You do it, I'm gonna do it. That's how they do it.
And you know what I really didn't like throughout this whole thing? People were saying, this might be a minority, this might be a trans person, as if that factors into the equation if it turns out to be true. But whenever it's a white person who ends up killing somebody else, do we all appreciate the fact that that's generally not part of the conversation?
No, it's not. It's never.
So the only conversation that's been had so far is whether or not they are one of these other identities. Now that it's not, it's completely excluded from the conversation. And I only bring this up because earlier this week or last week, there was the killing on the bus. How many people messaged me, are you going to talk about this? You're probably not because it's a black person. I'm like, it's a mentally ill person who's been let out after 13 convictions. He should have been in jail. And he's schizophrenic and he was never put in. You making this a race thing is fucking ridiculous. However, I think it's interesting that 2 days later, a white young man goes out and kills somebody, and the discussion around race doesn't exist. And that's just something I just wanted to highlight as a small thing, because these two stories happen back to back.
It's two very different things. First and foremost, it was made into a race thing about the black guy and the white girl because he said, I got that white girl. Number one. Number two, Tyler Robinson was made a situation where they brought in the transgender factor because he was dating somebody who's transgender, who's transitioning into being a female. So this is where conversations like this, I believe, are being conducted in a format that people don't look into the aspects of it. And that is a factor. Because Tyler Robinson was dating this person, I'm willing to bet more than not that this transgender was left-leaning, because the left is the one who supports more of the transgender policies that have been enacted over the last couple years. And so that's just an easy assertion. Now, does that mean that the left radicalized them? I don't know. It depends on what you think of the left. And it depends on understanding that there's a center left, there's a radical left, then there's a radical right and a center right. And I know there's a bunch of other labels that people would like to also add, but I think there's just that four. And understanding that the radical left is crazy, the radical right is crazy. Not bringing that up and not speaking of that leads to this tribalism, which I've spoke about before, where it's us versus them and it's all team sport. And this is the problem. And I think, unfortunately, they're contributing to this problem in this video.
And I thought it was interesting that as a black creator, I always get messaged whenever another black, I'm responsible. Like, it's my job to, I have white fatigue. I'm not even sure what that means, bro. You don't know about black fatigue? Yes, I know. I got the white one. I do think it's interesting that the moment this crime happens, that people go straight to identity politics, including the people who say they hate identity politics.
But it's white. It's just like, oh no, it's just
no. But like, it's just like, oh, are they minority? Are they trans? It's like, is that what you're hyper focusing on after a crime?
Yes, they are.
Right. The same way that their rhetoric gets toned down if they're a white cis male, they hate that shit. All of a sudden, a crime happens. Are they trans? Are they this? Are they that? It's like, oh wow. It turns out identity politics is very popular on the right.
They're looking for even the roommate.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know, because the reporting keeps changing every single day. I just think it's interesting. Identity politics is at the forefront of this thing. What is the race of the individual who commits the crime? What is, well, as long as they're not white. If they're white, we kind of just move right past it. What is the ethnicity? What is their sexual orientation? It's like, all this is just identity politics. I find it interesting that we're hyper fixating on that. Isn't that what we've all fought against for a long time?
Well, we didn't fight for it, and they certainly didn't, so they're going to hyperfixate on that.
Even cancel culture. You know, for the longest time, I had a whole bunch of people tell me, remember that white lady who ran up on that kid and was calling him the N-word a bunch of times on camera? I had a lot of people, I had a lot of right-wingers telling me that this woman losing her job is horrible. She should be allowed to go up to a young 10, 13-year-old kid and call him the N-word a dozen times on camera and not be fired. Mm-hmm. But now with this incident, because people are celebrating, which I think is horrible, I think it's bad, I think it's stupid, but I would never think people should get fired for that. Should they lose their job? If you think yes, then you're for cancel culture. That's what it is.
See, again, no, I don't agree. That's not cancel culture, okay? For example, the lady who ran up to the little boy and called him the N-word a bunch of times. The reason she got fired isn't just because of cancel culture. Cancel culture may have played a part in it, and I think cancel culture has devolved. The phrase itself has devolved into something that needs to be defined. It's used just freely. But the reason this lady got fired is because if there are black people who work there and she decides to say this to one of them, or she decides to do something, like, for example, I don't know what job she had, but let's just say for shits and giggles, she has a job where she's responsible for people and gives the black folks a harder time at the job. The company could be held liable for her. So not only could she hurt the black people that she works with, or maybe the black people that she might be in a support role for if she's working in customer service, that could lead to a bigger fallout for the company. So what do you do when you have somebody who has a ridiculous stance on something or says something that's inappropriate? You fire them. That's just a company thing. Now let's move on to the Charlie Kirk thing. People are getting fired not because they don't care, or they weren't sympathetic, or because they didn't care what happened to Charlie Kirk. Those people who were fired were celebrating the passing of a person. Let's put that into context. You work at a job. You celebrate the passing of someone. What happens if you then, if you're willing to post that online, if you then turn around and commit some kind of act now, or support some kind of act that takes somebody else's life, guess what happens? These people's family can now sue the company. You might not like that because, oh, America, you can sue anybody for anything, fine, and I'm okay with that. But you gotta be realistic and understand that that's why companies are getting rid of people. As somebody who's owned a company, I would fire someone so fast if I thought they could lead to me possibly being sued down the line.
But those same people on the right don't like cancel culture when it's against them. So it's convenient. It's convenience. It's convenient cancel culture. It's whenever you can control it.
Yep.
That's weird.
Yes.
That's weird in a twisted way.
I don't think it's twisted. It just goes to show you that the groups who try to pretend like they're so different from the other side are quite identical. In fact, they'll engage in the same behavior.
Yep.
They'll pretend they're the victims of all the situations.
Yep.
They will do identity politics when it's convenient. They will engage in violent rhetoric and then pretend to be victims right afterwards. Like, every group does this. The left will do this, the right will do this, but I need us all to accept that they're not different. And if you think they're different, you can just watch the behavior in front of you. How is this different from identity politics? How is this different from cancel culture? How is this different from all the stuff that I heard from conservatives for the last 10 years that the left does too much of? I don't know. All the crazy rhetoric, all the vilifying the other side, they all do it. Until we get past this point of pretending like the other side is a problem, we will never get past this point.
There's going to be a whole revolution. With all them guns around, there's going to be a whole civil war, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Who knows?